I do know John.
Dan.
Yeah, he's.
I feel like I should know the answer to this, but I want to ask it anyway because it came up. So I think parents have the option of doing 4K, they're not required.
Correct. Yeah.
I thought it was optional, but then, so is it state law that you're required to enroll your children at 15?
Not till age 6. So technically, kindergarten is optional as well.
Yep.
Although there was a new law adopted about 5 years ago that made kindergarten a prerequisite for first grade. That was back then the EAC got that one. They were kind of not necessarily. There's most districts were policies that would allow. I mean, we still have the right to place if we believe the kid's ready for first grade, but it's not an automatic. Yeah, it is. Oh, quite a few. It's only like 80% that are eligible. Oh, it is. Yeah. To be honest, don't know what happened this past week. I know we had 2 individual girls made tennis state. That's the last I saw was ours that was still competing. I think they made. The volleyball is just hadn't started to play the regionals yet. So they're doing really well, but they yeah.
All right, we can get started. I'd like to call the meeting to order. There's been declaration of public notice. Sorry, there we are. Public appearances. Sorry, you stood up just right. Item D, I'd like ask for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Item E, recognition.
I don't have anything this evening.
Item F, correspondence and announcements.
Nothing.
G, administrative reports.
And I
Stan?
do not have a report tonight.
Okay, board reports. Carrie?
Wow.
MGF?
We're just flying through this. I
That's
can
right.
stretch this out.
But my goal is to finish the meeting before Jeff gets here.
Well, let me be brief. So the Monona Grove Education Foundation just met yesterday morning, Tuesday, October 11th. Good turnout for that meeting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people attended. Great meeting, and there was a lot on their agenda. This is the time of year where the Education Foundation selects its officers, and the same slate of officers that has currently been in place has all been renewed and re-elected to continue. So President John Weinberger, Vice President William Ramaker, Treasurer Edward Young, Secretary Mary O'Connor. They'll all be coming back in their roles. And the other thing that was confirmed in business matters at that meeting was the selection of the committee who will review and approve the grants when those come in from teachers for the 2017-18 grant cycle, and the committee will be the same as last year. So those were important business items for the running of the foundation. And then also there was a, as has been the case for the last few meetings, majority of the energy went into discussion of the 2016 gala. I know you all know the date because we've talked about it every time. It's November 5th. I hope lots of folks have already considered marking their calendar and plan to attend. The tables are filling up pretty fast. A lot of the discussion around capacity of the event venue. It's going to be at the East Side Club this year, and so the Foundation Planning Committee was looking closely at the enrollments or registrations for this and making sure that the capacity of the venue is sufficient. Also, we had a nice presentation from Will Nimmo, who's going to be providing support for the event and talking about how he'll be coordinating the presentations from the grant recipients for this year. The teachers who receive grants from the foundation will come and present on the work that they've been doing. And so the Education Foundation Planning Committee is coordinating now what the actual program is going to be. And so you can kind of see it taking shape. So that's been great. In the interest of time, I won't go into any additional detail, but I will say that the event is shaping up really great, and I feel confident that it's going to reflect very well on the district and be the kind of thing everyone would want to go to if only they knew about it. So I think the next thing is to make sure we continue to get the word out. I appreciate that Dan immediately got a change made to the homepage of the website, so now if you come to the mononagrove.org website, you'll see tickets now. So that's just a good reminder for anyone who hasn't yet done so that there's still the opportunity to do that. I have lots of other notes, but I think in the interest of brevity, I'll take questions if you have anything else you wanted to know.
Okay.
I would, I would just add, again, because the committee has worked on the sponsorships, the business partners with the school district have been huge and really stepped forward. And right now, they have close to $10,000 in sponsorships and silent auction already paid. And again, they've sold 20 tables, so depending on how many more they can accommodate, you need to get your table.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the report of the WASB Fall Regional Meeting, which was held last Thursday in Stoughton. I attended with Jennifer and Dan. What do we get? We got a great dinner that was prepared by students, I believe. Was the story?
It was, yes.
And then we talked about continuous improvement in schools. It's just reinforcing the message of the role of the board, what we do to effective continuous improvement in schools. And then we did have sort of the legislative piece where they talked about finance and what the sort of budget outlook and what sort of the discussions they have with the governor and the legislature for the upcoming biennium. Jennifer, do you have anything to add about the WASB meeting?
Cool food, good talk,
Okay.
Fun to be in my alma mater. Yeah, I did.
Here, Jennifer and I attended the effective school board meeting, the pre-meeting part, and I actually did have Joyce post my notes this afternoon. There was some, again, it was, wouldn't you say it was a very good meeting?
Oh, yeah.
And the materials that they presented, I thought were excellent. And again, I would encourage us to have Ben Richter or Ben Butler come and just kind of do that overview for us sometime in a 30-minute section, because they do a wonderful job of reiterating things, and these are questions we have frequently, and then you can actually ask your questions in that environment, and it just will, I think, will help us make a better meeting. One thing they mentioned, which was interesting, was that state law requires one meeting per month, so the board is required by state law to meet once a month, which is kind of interesting, and you have to have a quorum there. So if you call a meeting and you don't have a quorum, it doesn't count. And actually, you can be fined for not meeting that requirement, which is interesting. And then they did review the open meetings law, and we had a couple questions on that, so I thought that was really kind of interesting. The other thing that Ben reiterated was, if you have committees that are board authorized as a subunit, even if it's kind of indirect authorization, those meetings should be noticed and open is required. There's a second-year requirement on record retention, included seven-year requirement on record retention, including board-related email. And then there's been a change in law on the notice requirement, and I'm sure Joyce is up to date on that. What basically Ben said at the time was that you may just want to leave it the way it is because it's still kind of variable, but it does allow you to give notice a little differently. Then he also talked about phone presence for meetings and the requirements for that, so that might be a helpful thing to have them come and talk to us about. It must be accessible, you must be able to be heard, and as to count toward a quorum, it's somewhat questionable, and WSB does not recommend other than in-person presence for closed session. And he recommends a clear policy on remote presence. Then in closed session, Ben suggested that the motion to move into closed should come from a board member versus from the president. The law requires specific notification of what will be discussed in closed session beyond just a reference to the statutory exception. He said a name is not required, but a position would be, so if you're going to talk about a particular position, then you have to name that position. Any actions in closed session with a violation can be overturned. He, when asked the question about returning to closed session after a board meeting, if you had the board meeting and closed was not agendized, he was not comfortable with that. But he would do further research if we needed that. And he also reminded us that minutes for closed sessions must be kept and retained. And I don't know how we're doing with that. Public comment period, he again encouraged us to continue to do that. It must be on the agenda. And he talked about board meeting minutes must be available within 45 days. Draft minutes are subject to open records, and you must keep the minutes for closed session. So again, I have the full handout, and he didn't get all the way through it, but it was really an excellent meeting.
It was. I thought the one exception that I hadn't really thought about was the minutes for closed session have to name individuals by name, whereas the posting does not. So that if there's ever a request for records, that the individuals are actually referred to. So I just hadn't thought about the importance of that.
By individuals, do you mean board members, or if it was a personnel matter?
Correct, if it's a personnel matter, so when you post it, you don't, right? But within the closed session minutes, you need to because of the matter record. So just, kind of common sense, but just something I hadn't thought of until it was really articulated.
Susan?
Yeah, and I want to thank you for putting your notes here, because they did answer some questions. And yeah, just as a follow-up to that, then because closed session minutes are also subject to open records, but if you then release them, then you redact the names. I mean, that's what we've always done in the past. They've got files and notes and those kind of things. And specifically because the question came up at our last meeting, I believe, about emails and how long you had to take them. We were talking about the need to archive them and suggesting that everyone should, by habit, be forwarding them to your school email so that there is an automatic record. So it's nice to have this clarified that it is in fact a 7-year requirement on record retention, so that in fact that would be a good process for people to follow. Then you don't have to worry about saving it on your own server for 7 years or whatever, because it's already there. And otherwise, this all sort of fits with what we've heard from Mike Jolka as far as the closed session. That was also his advice, that if we wanted to ever return to closed session, we had to put that on our public agenda. It should be posted that way. And I believe we may have done that once recently. But, and then I guess lastly, I just had a question about public comment period. When it says must be on the agenda, that just means that you have to put it on the agenda, but it doesn't mean that they have to address a topic that's on the agenda. That's what I'm asking you.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
then he also talked about what you could talk about, and how you could respond.
Right.
But I didn't point to that.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the YMCA Racial Justice Summit, which Jeff
I did
had.
just in time.
Yes, you did?
Yeah. It was awesome. There was people, we were represented, every school I believe was represented. We had some students there. We had Diane, I don't want to mess this up, Diane Zhang, Lisa Yang, Lucas Simpson from GDS, Kaylin Andrews from Monona Grove, and Matt Salgi and Althea Bernstein from MG21. And what they did is they had the kids were there only on Friday, and they had an afternoon seminar, and then they came out and gave a presentation, and Thea Bernstein did a spoken word that was phenomenal. And I was going to play it tonight, but I have a YouTube that's not very clear, and I thought it'd be a mess. So I can email it out to everybody that wants it. So, but it was great. There was a great speaker, Verna Myers, who pointed out that everybody has racial biases, no matter who you are or where you are or what you do, in some way or another. She used the example of she was flying recently and was all excited because she had a woman pilot, and then hit turbulence, and then was wishing there was a man pilot. So everybody has the biases, and the best way to deal with it is to understand it, hit it head on, and not be ashamed of it. So it was phenomenal. I wish we could get more people there. Maybe, I don't know, but it was really good.
All right. Any questions? Thank you. Personnel Committee, Dean?
This is the report that was suppressed last time.
Give me the dang, give me that piece of paper.
Did you bring the survey?
I think I saw something on Joyce's desk. We'll grab it. I thought we'll hand it out during the workshop.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dean, for preparing the note.
Yeah, I didn't delegate it to you.
Good job.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, right.
Okay, this is, you've seen some of this stuff, and basically what we've done is it's already October, but this is kind of the hope for target workload that we have for the year, various topics. And this was arrived at with input from MGEA, administration, Dan, committee, and that sort of thing. So you can kind of see it's we could be meeting in the personnel committee almost permanently. It looks like so. It's a full employment agenda. If you have any questions on any of the items, one of us can probably.
Come to the meeting.
I'll just add, as far as our next meeting, I sent several dates to the MGA leadership, wait to hear back on some, then I'll send to the two of you and we'll get some. Okay, so hopefully within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. No more questions on that?
I do have one.
Yes.
Thanks for doing this. I like seeing it in writing too. Level 5 criteria. So my thinking on this is we just are doing level 4 right now with our current teachers. And so level 5, this is a new next step on the progression, is that right? And so the timing for this, if you're working on it this year to develop criteria for level 5 would potentially mean next year people could start applying to become level 5? Is that what you're thinking, or is that too aggressive a timeline?
Well, I think at this stage of the game of our discussions that we're not going to deal with any salary or issues or anything like that with level 5, but we may be. This is probably one of the lower items on the agenda, but we may deal with differentiating the criteria between 4 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that'll be part of the discussion as well, as what is the right timeline for when we would begin implementing that. We haven't even had that discussion yet.
That's good.
Well, there's a lot of other stuff on here that will probably take up time before we get to some of that.
Thanks.
Susan?
And Dean, are you guys going to continue to work on some kind of support process for the teachers who are making application?
Well, we talk about that each time, and we've talked about the fact that there are a number of teachers that went through the process. Some of them went through it twice, and I think we need to formally identify some coaches in the school. That'd be my hope for, in addition to the principals, but there'd be the teachers and maybe the principals that participated could have workshops or something like that. I don't know. We haven't gotten to the specifics on it, but I think we need to broaden the base of the people who went through it, and probably the people who went. Both who probably had a second shot at it as well as the first time around, and probably give some personal insight into it. I don't know how much you can generalize across all of that. We have changed some of the criteria for the next year around. which will cut down on cut down, if not eliminate, the writing for the teaching factor on it. They just deal with the leadership portion. So that's, and my own thought was too, is that we may want to think about putting page limits on this and force some concentration.
Well, I had gone to the hearings, to the question, the listening
Q&As.
sessions with the teachers, and there still seems to be this feeling of not exactly knowing what to do or how to do it, and some discomfort. And one of the things that was part of this process was going to be teacher coaches who had gone through it to assist with that. So I was just kind of asking where you were and kind of what your time frame was.
To my knowledge, at this stage of the game, we have, to my knowledge, we have not identified people and put a name tag on them that says that they are a teacher compensation plan coach. But I think we probably ought to deal with at least identifying people who are willing to serve in an advisory role or capacity that with that. And with those people, I would guess they should have some common meeting to the kinds of things they would talk about and be able to discuss and things. I don't know, we haven't gotten there to that point, so I'm just projecting on where we might be. But we need to do that soon.
Or maybe just have some of the teachers who've done it in the buildings, at a staff meeting, talk about how they did that and how it went.
I think,
Okay.
I think a couple of those things that we don't have to have a committee meeting to do. We can sit down and just get the word out of what, of the principals. I presume they all willing to do it, but what other teachers who felt that I think some of the ones that maybe had to go through twice probably maybe have a lot to tell and say about it too, so forth.
I was just smiling at Angie.
Susan?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that the caution is that can be a very time-consuming thing too. So you really have to make sure it's teachers who feel they have the time, or think about some compensation if it's gonna be more formalized.
Yeah.
Because it just, if you're gonna ask somebody to give feedback, it depends on whether they just want a couple suggestions or whether they want somebody to review their application and that kind of thing. So I think you do need to think about it a little bit more.
That's a good point.
Because it's just adding one more thing. So.
Okay.
There was a hand up out here.
I think Lisa,
I was just gonna share that the MGA did in fact have some of the people who went through the process meet with other members of MGA as they were trying to complete that, and then non-MGA members reached out to me and I met with them. And so there, and in addition to both of those things, there was some written direction that Nicole put together to help people in their completion of the application. So there were both coaches, so to speak, and some additional supports provided.
Well, it seems to me if we had it seems to me this discussion here, that if we have a combination of your experience, maybe some input from all the principals and these MGA, I think we can probably at least get the next iteration of coaching down.
Okay. We don't have any action items tonight. Future agenda items, Carrie?
No, I was gonna move to adjourn at 7:41.
Let me talk about the future
I
meetings.
see them listed.
Well, actually, the first future meeting, it starts right after this one, where we're going to adjourn and then start a workshop. Well, we have a workshop with you lovely people. Then we have a workshop next October 19th, next Wednesday. And the next regular school board meeting is October 26th. So now,
Oh, 7:42. I'd like to move to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So we're going to go out to the other room for the workshops.
oh,